Okay, so today's title is the wilderness test. Okay? So in fact, the background picture is the exact wilderness in Israel. You know, the kind of the feel that the Israelites, when they left Egypt, they gone through the Red Sea and they go through the wilderness for how long? How long they were in the wilderness? Yeah, they're all murmuring. 40 years, that's right. 40 years they wander around in the wilderness. And then, how did they get into the promised land? There's another, water, the River Jordan. They cross over. And often in the Bible, especially New Testament Bible, that using that story to describe our walk in Jesus Christ. So that Egypt, being a slave, Hebrew people, and they were there, it's equivalent of the forces of darkness, you know, that we were slaves to Satan. And then Moses, like Jesus, came like Moses. He set us free from the bondage of Pharaoh, the bondage of Satan, so that out of all the work of God, and we were able to get out of Egypt. Okay, and when we get out of the Egypt, what they had to cross, and it's the big ocean, Red Sea. And when they crossed the Red Sea, you know, Book of Hebrews and Apostle Paul's writing, and then also other places that it compares as a baptism, water baptism. What happens on the water baptism? Water baptism is the one that you declare to the world that I used to live for myself, but now I die to myself, and now I'm going to live for Christ. In other words, now the Christ, one who died on the cross, is the Lord, and He is the King. I am not going to live my life for my own. And that was the meaning. And the people of Israel, when they gone through the Red Sea, how did they respond to the Lord in the time of wilderness? And that is something that we're going to look at today. And their behavior was not that great. And in fact, it shows that the weakness of our human will and of our own heart, that even though we receive the amazing grace of God and His salvation, we call ourselves, we are Christians, and yet we, just like this people of Israelites, wandering around in the wilderness, and we do the same thing. And the many places in the Bible give us the hint that life is like that wilderness. I think, you know, older you are, and you will understand that life is hard. How many of you beginning to get it, that life is not easy? Because it is sooner you understand this, it will be beneficial for you. Are you with me? Because in the very first book of the Bible tells us, as soon as we disobey God and being rebellious toward God's word and ran away from God, what happened? There's consequences of our own sin. And God said, now what was the sin of Adam and Eve? They committed sin by eating stuff they're not supposed to eat. So what was their consequence? Now, eating was difficult in the Garden of Eden? No, everything was so plentiful. Did they have to work hard to get the fruit? No, it's everywhere. All kinds of delicious things all out there. And all you got to do is just stretch out your arm and eat them. And how long are you going to live? You're going to live forever. In fact, there's a fruit. It's called a tree of life. That if you eat them, and you're going to live forever. And that's abundance. But then they chose the one a tree that is forbidden, and is the tree of knowledge and good and evil. And because of they did that forbidden fruit, what was the consequence? Now eating will be hard. Okay? If you want to eat, now you have to work for it. You used to get full, free. Old man, I have a message for you. Old guys, I'm sorry, but in order for you to eat, you had to work. Let me repeat again. If you want to eat for yourself and also for your future wife and the children and all that, don't just rely on somebody else. You got to work until sweat break down from your forehead, rolling down. You have to work. That's the thing, and eventually that work, that hard toil, will end your life. But that's the message. That's the consequences. No matter how hard you try to live forever, and it will be the thing. And what about the woman? What comes to the woman as a consequence of not obeying God? And you will have difficulty giving birth. And in fact, original Hebrew word, that hard toil, and giving birth will be hard, that is just the same word. And it's going to be hard, painful work. I tell you what, all the ladies, if all women have this sense of desire that I want to have a baby, I want to just raise them up and all that sort of things, that it will contain a lot of pain and hard work. Giving birth is hard, but how many of you know, all the mothers who know that raising them up is another level of hard. Right? Just giving birth is just hard for a day, or some of them carry on to the second day, but raising them up, and you will have many, many sleepless nights for all of those reasons. Okay? And there are so many other things. At the end, we all gonna die. I know it sounds so negative and bad, but I'm telling the reality. Bible is not shy away from telling you the reality. This is not a book that is bound by whatever the sense of politically correct and do this and do that. But this instead telling you the truth. In fact, one of the concern of the millennials, this is one of the first generation who grew up constantly hearing, oh, you can be whatever you want to be. All this positive word. And yet, people, they are these millennials, they are the ones who carry the more sense of depression and sadness in their heart. Even though the school teachers and even parents are scared to tell them anything negative. They're all try to tell the positive things, and then what happens? Because we are not preparing them for reality. How many of you know that you can be whatever you want to be? Is that all true? All the grown-up people? If you skip that part, you got to work hard at it. You got to have the discipline. But we don't focus on the discipline. But we just watching the movies and TV programs, and we read and we see, we are bombarded with this message that, oh, you can do anything you want. But in life, that is not the truth. Okay? So that's why these young people these days, they just have this thing that they discover why life is not as I was told. Because that is not based on the reality. True reality is that the life is full of pain. Sure, there is a joy those moments, and there's a time that we can celebrate because of what God has given. But if you expect that to last forever, that to be the norm, and you are mistaken. And we need to understand the life is hard. The sooner you figure this out, and the better it is for you. Okay? But in that time of difficulty in this life. And we need to learn, one other thing is that if you don't pass that exam, if you don't pass the test that God has put in this life, and you're not going to move on to the next level, you have to resit the test. So how many of you know that there's some people that you get into a certain situation and thinking that, oh, this will resolve itself. So you move the church, you change your circumstance, you get a new job, and all kind of try the new things, and yet, strangely, and you find yourself in exactly the same situation, and you're wondering what's going wrong. It's kind of like, and there was a time that many years ago, somebody walked into our church office and starting to say that, oh, something stinks, something dead, something awful. So, oh, what is it? It's like, no, I don't know what it is. And then he went into the kitchen. It's like, oh, it's even worse here in the kitchen. So it's like, I was really worried, oh, what's happening? And then he went into this, I'm not going to tell you who that is, but then he went into his own office and said, oh, even stinks here too. What's wrong with the whole church? You know what was the reason? He realized that he stepped on a cat poo. So wherever he goes, he's spreading the cat poo everywhere. Thinking that, oh, this church sucks. And the office sucks. Talk to the office lady, how come you didn't clean? And the kitchen team done a really bad job and something's going off everywhere. Sometimes we think that way. Maybe you are the one who carry the issue, but you think that it's all others. Until we realize, until we humble ourselves, until we get the point that we may going around the circle for 40 years instead of a month and a half, that time and the wilderness. So, and here's the scripture. And today I want to tell you this story here in the Exodus chapter 17. The whole Israelites in community and set out from the desert of Sin and traveling from place to place as the Lord commanded. And they camped at Rephidim, but there was no water for the people to drink. And how many of you have fasted before? More than anybody have done more than 3-day fasting? So what is the most difficult thing when it comes to the fasting is that when you get to the 3-day and beyond, actually after 3-day it's getting easier. But when you do a long day, many days of fasting, that when you get to the 3rd day and your sense is so heightened and you can actually smell some miso soup to the next town. You can smell all sort of things. You can smell the hamburger. You can smell all kind of things, and someone cooking noodles. You can smell all kind of things, and your stomach will just have a riot. Give me food, and especially Jesus, and he fasted even without water. So that's a supernatural thing. If you don't drink, you're not going to last too long. And I don't know how long they were without water, but there's millions of people in the wilderness, basically just the desert, and they were very thirsty. The Bible doesn't say how long their water bottles been empty. And verse 2, so they quarreled with Moses. So here's a challenge, what they faced. What was the challenge? They're in the desert, tough place. And there's nothing to drink, and that's a tough challenge. What would you do that when you don't have the basic necessity, whatever you think it is, the basic necessity of your life, that challenge, hits you? What will be your natural response? Their response. These people who have seen the 10th plague of God, have seen the big wide ocean open and walked right through, and that was only a few days ago. And yet, when they don't have the water, their response, their reaction was just quarrel. They were fighting with Moses. Why Moses? Because God is invisible. They cannot fight with God. But one who speaks on behalf of God, that was Moses, spiritual leader. And he says they quarreled with Moses and said, give us water to drink. And Moses replied, why do you quarrel with me? So you can tell that when you read the text, you don't see the emotion, you don't see the tone of voice. But we can guess from the Moses word, why do you quarrel with me? Saying that their tone wasn't nice. These people, they were fighting with Moses. Okay? And why do you put the Lord to the testing? Okay? Testing God? Why the wilderness is the place that who tests who? God testing people. Testing of what? Whether they will obey God or not. But here, people of God, Israelites, they were fighting with Moses, and Moses said, why do you put the Lord to the test? Okay? And it's all, it's like, why you try to twist God's arm to get water? How would you respond to God when you are in the situation that is very hard and difficult? How many of you been in a supermarket with mom and dad, or mom and or just the little kid? That little kid wants some lolly, and the mom says, "No, you had enough. You know, we're not going to give you. We have plenty at home. I'm not going to buy you." What do? Some naughty one. They begin tantrum. They cry louder, try to get everybody's attention to make mommy and daddy embarrassed for their little kids. Is that a good way to get what you want? No. And these people, they have seen what God can do in a mighty way. They have seen the 10th plague in Egypt. And they've seen the ocean wide open. They've seen, just the previous chapter, they've seen the God out of nothing, out of thin air, God bring down the manna. And to bring the quails from from the air. And they were able to eat the meat and the bread and all sort of things. And as soon as they get to the place at the out of that water, what do? They fight with Moses to the point that the Moses felt that you are testing God. Okay? But the people were thirsty for water there. They did not care. They grumbled against Moses and they said, why do you bring us up out of Egypt to make us and our children and livestock die of thirst? They jumped into conclusion very quickly. Did anybody die of the lack of water? No, we don't know how long that the lack of water was. But they were upset and they were saying things. Some of the little kids, they are making tantrum, and I've seen some little kids and saying, "Oh, my life is ruined." I'm like, what? I kid you not. I've seen little kids because the mommy don't buy the candy, and it says, "Oh, my life is ruined." That's been over dramatic, And some time that we think and we speak in a way that is so over the top. And these people, what did they say to Moses and God, who did all these amazing things? They said, why did you bring us up from Egypt just to kill us from lack of water? Wow. I think one thing they were testing the patience of God. But they were challenging in so much. But, before we point our finger to them quickly, look at your life. Look at yourself. How quickly we will jump into some sort of conclusion saying that, God, you hate me. God, you're not with me. God this and God that, and we come with all sort of complaints. And the story goes, then Moses cried out to the Lord, and what am I to do with these people? And they are almost ready to stone me. So you can see the intensity of their grumbling toward Moses. The Lord answered Moses, go out in front of the people and take with you some of the elders of Israel and take in your hands and staff on which you struck the Nile, and go. So you take the staff of God, and I will stand there before you by the rock at Horeb. See that? Did you catch this? And I will stand there before you. Here is the thing. If you have spiritual eyes open, if you are in touch with the Spirit of God, even in that tough situation and difficult time, that you gotta know that you are not alone. In the very challenging moment of Moses, and God was assuring him by saying that I will stand there before you even get there in that appointed place. Okay? God is with Moses, and so as God is with those bunch of Israelites, it'll be stupid to conclude that God is not with them just because there's not enough water. And we need to have the attitude when you are challenged with this life, which is desert time in this physical body. Life is, I told you, life is hard. What do you do when the hardness of life hits you, punch you? Would you make a tantrum before God and say, oh, why have I ever given my life to Jesus? You didn't do anything for me, just like little kids. And saying that, Mommy, what have you done for me? Daddy, why did you just, Mommy, why did you even just bring me into this life? My life is misery, this and that. We complain like little kids. But there's a bunch of millions of people complaining and try to fight. With Moses. But that is not how you get things from the Lord. What's the Word of God says? With thanksgiving, we put our request to the Lord and trust that the peace of God will guide our heart. We got to have a right attitude. Okay? All you got to do is what? Ask. When you are challenged with the situation in life, all you got to do is with gratitude and trust, thanking God and say, Lord, and I am facing this. It is nothing wrong with telling God and what you are challenged with. Okay? And in fact, what was the solution from God? And he says, strike the rock, and the water will come out of it for the people to drink. And that's interesting because this whole solution that God has for that challenge is that later on it is revealed, reflected by the Apostle Paul, 1 Corinthians chapter 10 and verse 4. It says, and he's talking about these people, and he used it for our Christian walk, and saying that drank the same spiritual drink, for they drank from the spiritual rock. I'm just reading 1 Corinthians chapter 10 verse 4. That accompanied them, and that rock was Christ. Isn't that interesting? Whatever these people, they experienced in the wilderness, and we can see the resemblance in some of the things. And why you strike the rock? That rock was broken in order to give water. Jesus is an eternal rock, and he was broken in his body so that the water of spiritual drink come out, and whoever drinks it will live. And it's very interesting. God brings this solution for that situation to the people that are not worthy of that solution, not worthy of that salvation, not worthy of the grace of the Lord. And yet, God did it. Not because they made a tantrum. God, out of his grace and out of his mercy, he granted and what they needed. And verse 7, and he called the place Massa. Everybody says Massa. Well, what does that mean? Test. They test God. And Meribah, in which the Israelites quarrel. They fight with God. They cannot fight with God, so they fight with Moses. One who stand for the Lord. And because they tested the Lord, saying, this is what they were saying when they were fighting with Moses. You know what they were saying? Is the Lord amongst us or not? They have serious doubt about, is God with me or not? After all the miracle that God has done in Egypt, after all the miracle, the providing manna, providing quail, providing just the bitter water, turning it into sweet water, and all the things, and after all the provision of the God the Father, they still doubt, they still fight with God, testing and saying, is God with me or not? I want you to know this. When you have this fundamental doubt as a believer, you know what you are doing? You are testing God. Instead of God training us, instead of God testing us, whether we obey Him or not. And we testing God. Are you with me? Are you with me, God? Or not? I don't know. Emmanuel, are you with me? Because there are times that when you are challenged in the situation and you may have doubt, but don't test God, thinking that if I make enough noise, if I get His attention and He will listen and obey my thing. No, it doesn't work that way. And 40 years later, the graduation speech of the wilderness school, and there's Moses, the principal, and he's giving the long speech. And that's the book of Deuteronomy, basically, and chapter 6. And to the people, next generation of the Israelites, and he's saying, and fear the Lord your God, and serve Him only. This is the conclusion that he was repeating many, many times. And take your oath in His name. Do not follow other gods, the gods of the people around you. Now soon you're going to enter into the promised land. And one thing you got to do is that your Lord is only one. And that is Shema Israel. The Lord is one. And you have only one God, and you got to serve Him. Don't serve any other gods, whatever the reasons. Don't serve yourself, but serve God. And that is a key message that the Moses, in his old age, just before he dies, in giving final speech, graduation speech to these the next generation, older generation, for 40 years, they all wiped away, died. And verse 15, it says, for the Lord your God, and who is among you, is a jealous God. Remember, Moses reminded them after 40 years, that the Lord is with you. Even if you don't feel like it. It's okay. When you are challenged by the curveball that the life throws at you, you may feel like God has abandoned you. But that may be your emotion speaking. That may be your frustration speaking. But it shouldn't be your faith of your heart. You got to know that God is with you. Okay? And the Lord your God is among you. And He is jealous God. If you have any other God, He will not spare. And His anger will burn against you, and He will destroy you from the face of the land. And verse 16, do not put the Lord your God to the test, as you did at Massa. Okay? As you have tested the Lord, don't test God. Thinking that, I'm gonna just make enough noise. I'm gonna just annoy God enough that He will listen. I'm not sure whether He's with me or not. Don't do that. Don't test God, because at the end of the day, who tests who? Does the student test the teacher, or the teacher test the student? It is the teacher, one who knows more and who is an authority person, tests the students, who is the learning one. And it is not the people of God testing God. Oh, can you do this? Oh, God, can you do that? Don't do that. Only God can do that to us. Okay? But don't try to test God. Oh, can you bring water even in this situation? Be sure to keep the commands and of the Lord your God, and do what is right and good in the Lord's sight. There's a thing called the good things and the right things in the sight of God, not in the sight of you and your own heart. And this is the code of God. When you are lost, when you are in a difficult situation, we are tempted to write your own code, to write your own principle. You want to do your own ways, but that is not how you do. You and I, we need to know the code of God. What is the Word of God? What is the truth of God? And instead of telling God to come in our way of doing things, we need to submit ourselves to the ways of God. Amen? That is the true way to the prosperity and success, even in this desert place called life. Do what is right and good in the Lord's sight, so that it may go well with you, and you can possess the land, and etc., etc. Blessing of the Lord will come. Okay? And I'm going to close with this one more scripture. That's in Matthew chapter 4. Remember, even Jesus, he was the very Son of God. Was he tested? Yes, he was. Did he go through the season of a desert, wilderness? Yes, he did. And this is the second test. Then the devil took him to the holy city and had him stand on the highest point of the temple. If you are the Son of God, he said, throw yourself down, for it is written. Wow, do you know that the devil knows the scripture well too? But this is the challenge. When Satan challenges Jesus, he challenges the very foundation of who he was. If you are a son of God, if you are saved, God, the devil may challenge you. Do you think you're a Christian? If you are saved, why don't you just do this? Whether God's going to answer your prayer this way or that way. Satan's a challenge, and he misused the Bible. This is Psalm 91, and it's a different context, different thing he's talking about. But he's just using, that's what all this different Christian cult, they try to use. Bible, but in a wrong context, in a different angle, different motive, and try to prove that something wrong to be right according to Bible. But you need to have a discernment, so don't get into argument with the people of the cult. So anyway, and you're going to be fine. That's the one way you become a superstar. Jump out. And verse 7, Jesus answered him, and it is also written, do not put the Lord your God to the test. You know which verse he was quoting? He was quoting exactly from the Deuteronomy chapter 6. Don't put your God to the test. Jesus, he knew that this is the season of wilderness. He knew this is the season that he has a way to serve the Lord for next 3 years. Not by superstar sort of thing, the Superman thing, jumping down from the high place and still not getting hurt. That is not the way. And he did not pursue this whisper of the idea from the enemy, because he did not need to prove that he is the Son of God. He knows it. Why? Because when he was baptized, what was happening? There's heaven open, and the voice from heaven, he said, this is my Son whom I'm well pleased with. He heard from the Lord. He did not need to prove himself. Okay? And then there's verse 8 again, that this is the third test. The devil took him to a very high mountain and showed him all the kingdoms of the world and their splendor. Remember, Jesus came as a king. Okay? But the God's way of he become a king is that they're going through a lot of sufferings, and even to the point of death on the cross, and resurrected on the third day, and that's how he will get the kingship. What devil is saying that, oh, you don't have to do all that hard work, remember? You don't have to do all that painful things. All you gotta do is this, that all this I will give you, he said, if you will bow down and worship me. That's all you gotta do. You bow down and worship me, then I will give all my possession, all these kingdoms and all these things to you, instead of you going through all the hard yard and dying on the cross. And it may sound silly for devil to challenge the very Son of God to worship him. But I want to tell you something, a very fundamental thing, is that the enemy, his ultimate goal in his heart, Lucifer, when he fell, what was his one goal he had in his heart? This archangel. One point he was called, they are sons of God. And yet these angels, and 1/3 of the angels, they fell down because they made a wrong goal in their heart. What was their goal? I am going to be just like God, and I want to be worshipped. What was Lucifer's role? Lucifer was the angel that would lead the worship. And he's supposed to worship the Lord all the time and serve the Lord. But one day he changed in his heart. I'm going to be like that God. I'm going to put my seat on the highest mountain just like that God. And I'm going to receive worship instead of worshiping him. That is the beginning of the fall. And 1/3 of the angels joined them. Okay? And this fallen angel had the deepest craving is like to receive honor and worship to himself rather than to God. Many years ago, I met an incredible, talented musician, and he was a composer, writing all sort of, back then, the new age sort of music category was sort of not that common, but he wrote this just a beautiful piano thing. And I was like, wow, that's weird. And he was explaining all this. And then, you know what he said? I never forget it. He said, how did you get this? I did not get much of a training in the music this and music that. But then he was frustrated with writing his music, whatever the music. And then he says that the one day, I don't know how, but he said, I sold my soul to the devil. And then from that on, I get this incredible inspiration flowing through it so he can play. And whatever he play on the piano, he can just turn it into. But it just contains some sort of weird things. You see people, suspect, some of the singers, some of the actors, who say, casually were saying, I sold my soul to devil and all that sort of things. That's not anything new. Even Son of God, Jesus, was tempted by the devil, saying that if you worship me, if you sell your soul, forget the call of God, and then I'm going to give you everything. You know what? The devil always promise a lot and deliver nothing. Maybe temporarily, thinking that, this is great. No. Don't sell your soul. Whatever the devil, whatever the world is offering to you, whether it's a fame, whether it's a money, whether it's whatever the experience and things, they seemingly give you, all you got to do is to deny God. Forget the church and forget the Word of God and you got to, just fly with me. Let's go. I'll show you the world. I'll show you the great time, fun time. Those are the whisper of the devil. Don't fall for it. Do not fall for it. Even the perfect Son of God, he was tempted. Worship me and I'll give you everything I have. If it is nothing, it was nothing on the heart of God, heart of Jesus. This won't be a temptation, but somehow it was a powerful way of temptation, even to Jesus. But we know that our example, the new Adam, There's Jesus. How did he respond? He responded with the very fundamental truth. Jesus said to him, said to this Satan, once called Lucifer, the worshiper and the servant of God, Lucifer, and Jesus, Son of God, is saying, away from me, Satan. For it is written, worship the Lord your God and serve him and him only. This is the biggest slap to the Lucifer who once worshipped the Lord, who once served the Lord. It is incredible, even this Son of God, Jesus, he's using this word. Away from me, Satan. He's, telling us who that is, this whisper. Worship the Lord. Who's God? Your God. Even Satan, he is your God. It is you who rebel. It is you who turn away. Worship the Lord your God and serve him and him alone. You know where is that quotation from? It is the same chapter, Deuteronomy chapter 6. The Moses sermon. Jesus was using it. And I'm telling you that whatever you think you are going through, the test in the desert, the challenges and difficulties, it is not only you are going through. All these other believers, we are all going through some form of testing. And I hope you pass the test. You know what happens if you don't pass the test? You have to resit again. You're smelling the cat poo, even though you just move into the different room. You move into the different place. You even divorce and get a new wife and get a new husband. And you do this and you do that. And wherever you go, you still smell the cat poo. Because you didn't wipe the bottom of your shoes. Until you do that, wherever you go, your life is like so dry, like the desert. Are you with me? That we need to get ourselves right. Do not serve anything else, including yourself. Because your flesh, lust of the flesh and the lust of the eyes, give you the craving that I got to do this and I got to do that. Even if that means that I'm selling my soul and I want to see the success in this life. Foolish. Why don't we all stand up? Close our eyes. And I want to just ask some of you to just come to the front. And you may find yourself that my life is getting tough. And I feel like I'm hitting the dead end. I feel like I'm going nowhere. But let us remember that we can talk to God with the respect. We can talk to God with faith. You don't have to twist his arm. And in fact, that's a wrong way to go about it. Just having a massive tantrum doesn't achieve anything. In fact, we are testing God. When you have this doubt, do I have God? Is God still with me? You submit yourself to the Lord. And I want to just pray this morning for some of those people, whatever the shape and form that you feel like you're going through, this season of difficulty that you've been just going through. And there's a way out. The way out is that this broken body of Jesus Christ. The water of living life is coming out of the sacrifice of Jesus Christ. And whatever the smelly things that we carry around, and you can wipe that out, and you can clean it through the blood of Jesus Christ. So I want to just pray this morning for those of you who want to receive the new beginning and changes of your life. Please come to the front, and I want to pray for you with the other elders. So just don't hesitate. Come to the front. For any of you who just sense that the Lord and I could change. I'm stuck in this situation and I'm struggling in this area, Lord, and have mercy on me. And I've been complaining to God. My attitude toward the Lord hasn't been right. And whatever it is, or it maybe it's completely something else that you want the help of God. And one of the point of the desert is that He wants us to be humble. One of the humble way, humbling ourselves before the Lord is that we acknowledge the need of God in our lives. So anyone who is in need of God, please come to the front and receive the ministry. And then we'll conclude the service. And I'm going to just close in prayer and then pray for the people. Father God, we thank you, Lord, for your eternal word. Many, many thousands of years ago, all these Israelites, after all that amazing thing that God has done, and they still complaining and grumbling and even quarreling with God. And that did not please you, the Lord. And we know different, Lord, and we see ourselves doing something similar or even worse. Have mercy on us, to your people, Lord. And give us your heart. And let us know that you are with us, no matter what is going on in our lives, Lord. So we surrender ourselves to you, Lord. And let us know that we are in your hand. In Jesus' name.